Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. I always believe that love was built on sacrifice, that if you worked hard, provided for your family, and put them first, everything else would fall into place. For years, that belief guided me, kept me grounded. I never questioned it, never questioned her. Megan was my wife, my partner, the mother of my son. I trusted her. Maybe that was my first mistake. While you're here, leave a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to know. Looking back, I can't pinpoint the exact moment things started to shift. Maybe it was gradual, so subtle that I didn't notice it happening. Or maybe I did notice, but I told myself it was nothing, that it was just stress or routine or the natural wear time on a marriage. But now, thinking about it, I wonder if I'd been blind all along. Megan had always been involved in our son's baseball. It was her thing. Early practices, weekend tournaments, the constant travel. I admired how dedicated she was. I had no problem staying back, holding down the fort, making sure everything ran smoothly so she could be there for him. That's what a good husband does, right? He supports. He sacrifices. At first, it felt like we were a team. She called to update me on the games, send pictures, tell me about the parents she was getting to know. But at some point, the calls got shorter. The texts became less frequent. And when she came home, it was like she had one foot still in those stadium bleachers. I told myself I was imagining things. Then the joke started. It happened at a family barbecue. Her parents were over, her sister and her husband, a few cousins. I was manning the grill, half listening as Megan talked about the upcoming championship tournament. Her sister asked if I'd be coming along, and before I could even answer, Megan scoffed. Jake? Oh no. He wouldn't last a weekend with the real baseball parents. The words were sharp, but the laughter that followed was worse. I stood there, tongs in my hand, forcing a smile while my own family laughed at the idea of me being involved. Come on, I said, trying to keep my voice light. Someone's got to work, right? Of course, Megan said, rolling her eyes like my entire role in our lives was a punchline. Something inside me twisted, but I shoved it down. It was just a joke, right? A stupid, thoughtless comment. Not worth making a scene over. Still, I couldn't shake it. Later that night, after the dishes were done and everyone had left, I sat in bed staring at the ceiling while Megan scrolled through her phone beside me. I wanted to ask her about it. I wanted to tell her how much it bothered me. But then she sighed and set her phone down. I have to leave early tomorrow, she said. Coach wants some of us there to help set up for the tournament. Another early morning? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. She glanced at me. It's important, Jake. You know that. Yeah, I knew. I knew baseball was important. I just wasn't sure I was anymore. She rolled over, facing away from me, and within minutes, her breathing slowed into sleep. I lay there, wide awake, wondering when exactly my wife had stopped seeing me. The next morning, she was gone before I even woke up. I found a note on the counter, a hurried, "Love you" scribbled at the bottom. I stared at it longer than I should have, trying to remember the last time she had actually said those words to my face. That was when the feeling started, a slow, creeping unease, a whisper in the back of my mind that told me something wasn't right. I ignored it, buried it, but deep down I knew something was off, and sooner or later, I was going to find out what it was. Megan had always been good at making me feel like I was overreacting. Every time I questioned something, she had a way of twisting it, making it seem like I was the problem, like I was imagining things. So I stopped questioning. I let things slide, told myself I was just being paranoid. But paranoia doesn't leave receipts. It started with little things. Missed calls, unread messages. The way she'd set her phone face down on the table. The way she'd leave the room to take a call, lowering her voice just enough that I couldn't quite make out the words. I'd ask her who she was talking to, and she'd sigh like I was exhausting her. Coach, team parents. Why do you care? I didn't care about the calls. I cared about the way she looked at me when she answered them, like I was being unreasonable for even asking. Then there was the luggage. One morning, I went into the garage to grab my toolbox, and Megan's travel bag was sitting near the door, half unzipped. She must have forgotten to put it away after the last tournament. I wasn't looking for anything, but as I picked it up, something slid out, a small, velvet jewelry box. My first thought was that it was for me. Maybe a late anniversary gift. A guilt present, even. I wasn't sure, but I knew Megan hadn't given me anything new in a long time. I flipped it open. Inside was a sleek, silver watch. Definitely expensive. Definitely not my style. A cold, not settled in my stomach. I turned the box over in my hands, searching for a receipt, a note, something to explain why my wife was hiding an expensive men's watch in her luggage. Nothing. I closed it, slid it back where I found it, and zipped up the bag. My hands were shaking, but I didn't know why. There were logical explanations, right? Maybe it was a gift for me after all, even if it wasn't something I'd wear. Maybe it was for a family member, a coworker. But the moment I tried to convince myself, I knew I was lying. I didn't say anything that night, or the next. I told myself I'd wait. That maybe Megan would bring it up, that she'd prove me wrong. But days passed, and the watch never appeared. No surprise gift. No mention of it at all. And then, another tournament weekend rolled around. "Hotel's booked," she said casually as she packed. "We'll be gone until Sunday night. I left you a list for groceries if you want to grab anything for the week." I nodded, watching her shove clothes into her suitcase. "What hotel?" She barely glanced at me. "Same one as last time." I kept my voice even. "The one an hour from the field?" She sighed, zipping up her bag. "It's where the team's staying. You know this, Jake." I knew a lot of things. I knew that the games were close enough that she didn't have to stay overnight. I knew that most of the other moms only booked rooms for Saturday, not Friday. And I knew that she was lying to me. But I didn't call her out. Not yet. Instead, I smiled. "Have fun." The words felt like acid on my tongue, but Megan didn't seem to notice. She gave me a distracted kiss on the cheek before grabbing her bags and heading out the door. I watched her car pull out of the driveway. My fingers hovered over my phone, hesitating for only a second before I opened the tracking app one had installed earlier that week. A red dot blinked on the screen, following Megan's car as she drove. I set my phone down. I had what I needed. Now I just had to wait. Megan's location pinged every few minutes, a small red dot moving steadily along the highway. I watched it from my phone, standing at the kitchen counter, coffee untouched beside me. My gut was tight, but my mind was clear. I had spent the last week convincing myself I was wrong, that maybe my suspicions were fueled by frustration, by the slow unraveling of our marriage. But this was real. The tournament was supposed to be held at a high school about 20 minutes outside the city. Megan's car, however, wasn't heading toward the school. It was moving toward the same hotel she had stayed at last time. I tapped the screen, zooming in. She had just pulled into the parking lot of the Briarwood Inn, a nice enough place, but not the one most of the parents used when they stayed overnight. That fact alone didn't prove anything, but it didn't sit right with me either. I knew what I'd seen in her bag. I knew what my gut had been telling me for months. I set my phone down and exhaled slowly. If she was cheating, I needed proof. Not just suspicions, not just a feeling in my gut. Proof that she couldn't talk her way out of. I grabbed my keys. The drive took just under 40 minutes. Every mile, my mind spun, replaying conversations, dissecting every excuse, every glance away, every forced smile Megan had given me over the past few months. By the time I reached the hotel, my hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached. I pulled into the back lot, choosing a space away from the main entrance. I checked the tracker one more time. Megan's car was still here. I scanned the lot, my stomach flipping as my eyes landed on another familiar vehicle, a dark SUV, parked a few spots away from Megan's. I recognized it immediately. Coach Reynolds. I let out a slow breath through my nose. The pieces were clicking together, but I needed to see it for myself. The lobby was quiet when I stepped inside, the kind of dimly lit space meant for people passing through, not lingering. A woman at the front desk glanced up and smiled. "Checking in?" I shook my head, forcing an easy expression. "Waiting for someone, thanks." She nodded, already looking back at her computer. I moved toward the hallway that led to the rooms. A security door blocked access, but before I could decide my next move, a man in a baseball cap pushed through from the other side, barely looking at me as he let the door swing closed. I caught it before it latched and stepped inside. The hallway stretched ahead, quiet except for the faint hum of a vending machine. I walked slowly, glancing at the room numbers. The tracker had placed Megan somewhere on this floor. My pulse pounded in my ears as I moved past one closed door after another. Then I heard it. Laughter. Megan's voice, unmistakable, muffled behind one of the doors. My body went rigid, every muscle locking into place. I stepped closer, my heart a hammer in my chest. Room 214. I stood there for a moment, staring at the number on the door. My breath came slow and controlled. I could knock. I could kick it down. I could make a scene, demand answers. But something inside me held me back. I didn't want answers. I already knew. I turned and walked back down the hall, back through the security door, back into the parking lot. I leaned against my truck, pressing my palms to the cool metal. Megan was inside that room. With him. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the tracking app, taking a screenshot. Then I opened my notes and typed the time, the date, and the room number. Then I drove home. The entire way back, my mind was blank, my body moving on autopilot. By the time I stepped inside my house, I already knew what I had to do. I needed more than a screenshot. I needed undeniable proof. Megan wanted to play games? Fine. I was done being the fool. I sat in the darkened living room, the glow of my laptop screen the only source of light. My mind wasn't racing anymore. It was focused, sharp, methodical. The emotions, the betrayal, the anger, the humiliation, they had taken a back seat. I had a job to do now. The screenshot of Megan's location was only the beginning. I needed proof, undeniable and unshakable, the kind that couldn't be dismissed with her usual excuses. I thought about hiring a private investigator, but I knew I didn't need one. I could do this myself. I pulled up the smart home app on my phone. Megan always thought I was paranoid for installing extra security cameras around the house, but now I had every reason to be. I checked the camera feeds, flipping through the different angles. Driveway, front porch, backyard. Nothing suspicious. Not yet. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. She'd be gone all weekend. That gave me time. The AirTag had confirmed my suspicions, but I needed to get inside that hotel room. I needed to see it for myself. I needed to hear it. I spent the next hour researching. Hidden cameras, audio recorders, tracking apps. Things I never thought I'd have to look up. By the time I closed my laptop, I had a plan. The next morning, I drove to an electronics store across town, one Megan never went to. I browsed the security section, scanning for something discreet. A tiny voice recorder caught my eye. Small enough to fit inside a bag, battery life up to 48 hours. Perfect. I bought it without hesitation. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table, testing the recorder. The quality was clear. If I could plant this in her bag, I'd have everything I needed. But I wanted more. I needed to know how long this had been going on. Had it started recently? Had it been happening for months? Years? How many times had I kissed her goodbye while she was planning to meet someone else? I picked up Megan's tablet from the counter. She always left it lying around, assuming I never touched it. Wrong. I opened her email, scrolling through the inbox. At first, everything looked normal. Work updates, team schedules. Then I saw it. An archived folder labeled Tournaments. I clicked it, and there it was. A thread of emails between Megan and Coach Reynolds. Most of it was about the team, practice schedules, game times. But buried between the professional talk were messages that sent my blood running cold. Book the same room as last time. Let's make this weekend count. Can't stop thinking about last night. Hope you're wearing that dress again. Don't forget to delete these. We can't be careless. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles turning white. It wasn't just an affair. It was planned, repeated, hidden in plain sight. I took screenshots of everything, emailing them to myself from a burner account. Then I deleted the sent messages. Megan was careful, but she wasn't as careful as she thought. I checked my watch. It was nearly noon. If I left now, I could get to the hotel before Megan and Reynolds checked out. I grabbed my keys and the recorder, sliding into my pocket. I wasn't going to confront them yet. No, I had something better planned. By the time I arrived at the Briarwood Inn, my heart was steady. I parked near the back, where I had seen their cars the night before. Inside, the front desk clerk barely glanced at me. I leaned against the counter, putting on my best calm voice. Hey, I think my wife left something in her room. We were here last night, and she's already on the road, but she told me to swing by and check. The clerk tapped at the computer. What room number? I kept my voice casual. 214. She clicked a few more times. They haven't checked out yet. Perfect. I forced a sheepish grin. Gotcha. Mind if I just take a quick peek? She said it's probably near the nightstand. She hesitated, but then sighed, grabbing a key card. Just make it quick. I took the card and walked toward the hallway, forcing myself to move normally. My hands were steady as I slid the key into the lock and pushed the door open. The air inside was stale, the sheets rumpled. I scanned the room. On the desk sat an open duffel bag, Megan's. I walked over, my pulse slow and even. I unzipped the front pocket and slid the recorder inside, making sure it was tucked beneath a few random items. Then I stepped back, taking in the scene one last time. I had all the proof I needed. Now it was time to use it. I drove home without music, without distraction, just the quiet hum of the engine and the storm brewing in my mind. My grip on the steering wheel tightened as I thought about what I had just done. The recorder was in place. The emails were saved. And Megan had no idea that, in a few hours, her entire world was about to start falling apart. When I got back, I went straight to my laptop. I opened my inbox and reread the messages I'd sent to myself. Each line confirmed what I already knew, but seeing it again made my jaw clench. Same room as last time. We can't be careless. Can't stop thinking about last night. I clicked out of the window and checked the tracking app. Megan's location hadn't changed. She was still at the hotel. I tapped my fingers against the table, forcing myself to think clearly. I had the written proof, but I needed to hear it. The recorder would be running for hours, and I couldn't sit around waiting. I had to prepare for what came next. I grabbed a notepad and started writing. Every date, I could remember when Megan had a tournament. Every weekend, she had been gone. Every excuse she had given me for why she needed to stay late, why she needed extra time away. I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to dismantle every lie she had ever told me, piece by piece. By the time the sun started to set, I had everything I needed. I checked the tracker one last time. Megan's location had finally moved. She was on the highway, heading back. I stood and rolled my shoulders, shaking out the tension. I had one more thing to do. I walked into our bedroom and opened Megan's closet. I found her duffel bag, the one she always took to tournaments, hanging on the back of the door. I unzipped the main pocket and rifled through it. Clothes, toiletries. Then my fingers brushed against something small, something metallic. I pulled it out. A key card. I turned it over, my stomach tightening. It was from the Briarwood Inn. So, she kept souvenirs now. I put it back exactly where I found it and stepped away. My heart should have been racing, but it wasn't. I was past that now. Megan walked through the door an hour later, dropping her bags by the entrance with a tired sigh. Hey, she said, forcing a smile. How was your weekend? I looked up from my laptop, keeping my expression neutral. Quiet. She nodded, moving toward the kitchen. The boys played great, made it to the finals, but we lost by one run. I stood and stretched, watching her carefully. You must be exhausted. You have no idea, she laughed, opening the fridge. I just want to shower and pass out. I leaned against the counter. How was the hotel? Her hand hesitated on the fridge door. It was quick, barely noticeable, but I saw it. She turned and gave me a confused look. What? The hotel, I repeated. Was it nice? She blinked, then let out a small chuckle. Oh, yeah. Same as usual. I nodded slowly. Same as usual. She gave me a tired smile, brushing past me. I need to shower. Be right back. I waited until I heard the water running. Then I walked to her bag, pulled out the recorder, and went straight to my laptop. The file was over 2 hours long. I put on my headphones and hit play. At first, it was nothing, just rustling a zipper, footsteps. Then voices. Megan's voice. Reynolds' voice. I turned the volume up, my jaw locking. It was all there. Every word. Every whisper. Every lie. I sat through it all, forcing myself to listen, to take in every second of proof. My hands curled into fists, nails digging into my palms. When it was over, I exhaled slowly. This was it. I ejected the recorder, tucked it away in my desk, and leaned back in my chair. Megan had no idea that, in less than 24 hours, everything she thought she had gotten away with would be laid bare for everyone to see. and I was going to make sure of it. The morning felt different. I woke up before Megan, lying in bed with my thoughts racing. She was curled up beside me, her breathing slow and steady, completely unaware that her world was about to implode. I studied her face in the dim light, wondering if she ever felt a shred of guilt for what she had done, if she ever lay awake at night, thinking about how she was betraying the man who had stood by her for years. Judging by how soundly she slept, I already knew the answer. I slid out of bed carefully, grabbed my phone, and walked into the kitchen. The coffee machine hummed as I pulled up my email and scanned through the files I had saved. The recorded audio, screenshots of text messages, the tracker logs, the damning evidence that would be impossible for her to deny. Then, I pulled up my list of contacts. I had called Reynolds' wife, Lisa, late last night, giving her only a brief, cryptic warning. She had sounded groggy, but when I told her we needed to talk in person about something important, she immediately agreed to meet. Now, I was about to turn that warning into a full-scale reckoning. Megan walked into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes and yawning. "You're up early." I poured my coffee, keeping my voice even. "Got a lot to do today." She reached for a mug, not even sparing me a glance. "What's the plan?" I sipped my coffee, just tying up some loose ends. She didn't press further. That was the thing about Megan. She never really paid attention to me unless I was useful to her. I had spent years chalking it up to stress, to her being busy with the kids, with work, with everything else in her life. But now I knew the truth. I had been nothing more than background noise to her. The steady, predictable man she could rely on while she snuck around behind my back. By noon, I was on the road, heading toward the coffee shop where I had agreed to meet Lisa. She was already there when I arrived, her fingers tapping anxiously against the table. When she saw me, she gave a hesitant smile, but there was uncertainty in her eyes. "Hey, Jake," she said. "What's going on?" I sat down, sliding my phone onto the table. "Lisa, I need you to listen to something." She frowned, glancing between me and the phone. "What is this about?" I didn't answer. I pressed play. Megan's voice filtered through the speaker, followed by Reynolds. Their laughter, their whispers, then the unmistakable sounds of their betrayal. Lisa went pale, her hands trembling as she gripped her coffee cup. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. That can't be." I watched her as the realization settled in, the raw pain flashing across her face. "I track her," I said. "She's been using baseball tournaments as an excuse to meet him. This isn't speculation. It's real." Lisa's breathing turned uneven, and she covered her mouth, squeezing her eyes shut. "I knew something was off," she muttered, "but I never thought." She trailed off, her shoulders shaking. I let her sit with it for a moment, giving her time to process the weight of what she had just heard. Finally, she straightened, her eyes darkening with anger. "What do we do?" I leaned forward, my voice steady. "We expose them." She wiped at her face, nodding slowly. "How?" I pulled up the schedule on my phone, tapping the championship game listed for tomorrow. "Right here," I said, in front of everyone. Lisa stared at the screen, her lips pressing together. Then, a slow, bitter smile curled on her face. "Good," she said. "Let's ruin them." We sat there for a while longer, discussing the details, making sure every part of this plan was ironclad. By the time we left the coffee shop, we both knew exactly what was coming. When I got home, Megan was in the living room, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as I walked in. "Everything okay?" she asked. I forced a small smile. "Yeah," I said. "Everything's just fine." She nodded, looking back at her phone without another thought. And that was when I knew, without a doubt, that she never saw me coming. The morning of the championship game arrived, and Megan was already up and moving, packing snacks and gathering her things like she was the perfect, devoted team mom. She hummed to herself in the kitchen, completely oblivious to what was about to happen. "Are you coming to the game today?" she asked as I poured my coffee. I looked at her, taking in the way she effortlessly played the role of a caring wife. "Yeah, I wouldn't miss it." She gave me a quick smile before heading toward the door. "I'll see you there then." I watched her leave, knowing it would be one of the last times she ever walked out that door as my wife. Then, I picked up my phone and sent a single message. "It's time." The response from Lisa came instantly. "We're on our way." An hour later, I was pulling into the parking lot of the baseball field, my heart pounding. Parents bustled around with folding chairs and coolers. Kids ran across the grass, and the team warmed up on the field. It was a normal, cheerful day for now. I spotted Lisa near the concession stand, her arms crossed tightly. She looked calm on the surface, but her eyes told another story. "Everything set?" I asked. She nodded, her jaw tightening. "He's in the dugout." Megan's sitting with the moms, acting like nothing's wrong. I glanced toward the bleachers and saw her, laughing with a few of the other parents, completely at ease. She had no idea that in a few minutes, the world as she knew it would come crashing down. The announcer's voice crackled over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin today's championship game, we'd like to take a moment to recognize the hard work of our coaches, including our very own Coach Reynolds." Applause rippled through the stands. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, walking toward the announcer's booth. The staff member inside turned, startled as I entered. "I need the mic for a moment," I said. He frowned. "I'm not sure that's—" Lisa stepped up beside me, her voice firm. "Get it to him." Something in my expression must have told the guy not to argue, because he hesitated, then handed me the microphone. I pressed the button and spoke. "Before this game starts, I have something important to share with everyone here," I said, my voice steady and strong. "See, for the past several months, my wife, Megan, and our beloved Coach Reynolds have been having an affair. And not just anywhere. No, they've been using these tournaments as their personal getaway, sneaking off while our kids played their hearts out on this field." The buzz of conversation stopped. The sound of a soda can hitting the pavement rang out like a gunshot in the stunned silence. Then, a horrified gasp echoed from the bleachers. "Megan," one of the moms whispered. I continued, my voice unwavering. "But don't just take my word for it." I held up my phone, tapping the screen to cast images onto the large digital scoreboard. Text messages between them. GPS logs showing them at the same hotel room for hours at a time. A blurry but unmistakable photo of them sneaking into his room during the last away tournament. Megan shot up from her seat, her face drained of color. "Jake, stop." Reynolds stumbled out of the dugout, looking panicked. Lisa, standing beside me, pulled out her own phone and raised her voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be filing for divorce immediately. And I'd suggest you all think twice before leaving your kids under the guidance of a man who cheats on his own wife during their games." Megan rushed toward me, her hands shaking. "Jake, we can talk about this." I stepped back, looking at her with nothing but cold indifference. "We're past talking, Megan." The parents were murmuring now, some shaking their heads in disgust, others openly glaring at her and Reynolds. The league director stepped forward, his face red. "Coach Reynolds, please step aside. We'll be speaking after the game." A couple of the other coaches already looked at him like he was a dead man walking. Reynolds turned to Lisa, reaching for her arm. "Lisa, please, let's just—" "Don't," she snapped, yanking away. "We're done." Megan looked around wildly, realizing she had no allies here. Even the other moms who had been friendly with her moments ago now avoided her gaze. "You ruined everything," she whispered, her voice trembling. I met her eyes, letting her see exactly how little I cared. "No, Megan, you did that all by yourself." Then, without another word, I walked away. The drive home felt surreal, the adrenaline from the stadium confrontation still coursing through my veins. I had imagined that moment so many times, what it would feel like to finally expose Megan, to strip away the illusion she had carefully maintained. Yet, as I gripped the steering wheel, a strange numbness settled in. I had done it. I had burned everything down. But now came the aftermath. When I pulled into the driveway, Megan's car was already there. She must have driven home at record speed, desperate to get ahead of the consequences. I took a deep breath, stepped out of the truck, and walked toward the house. The second I opened the door, her voice hit me like a slap. "What the hell was that, Jake?" she shrieked, standing in the middle of the living room with her arms crossed. I shut the door behind me, moving past her without a word. She followed, stepping into my path. "Do you even realize what you've done? You humiliated me in front of everyone. The team, the parents, the entire community." I dropped my keys onto the counter and turned to face her. You mean the people you've been lying to? The ones you've been using as cover while you sneaked around with Reynolds? Her face twisted with anger. That was private, Jake. You didn't have to. I laughed, a cold, humorless sound. Private? You mean like our marriage? The vows you threw away every time you snuck off to his hotel room? She clenched her fists, her breath shaky. It wasn't like that. I leaned against the counter, arms folded. Then what was it like, Megan? Enlighten me. She opened her mouth, then closed it, scrambling for an excuse, a justification. But there was nothing. We both knew it. She tried again, softer this time. Jake, I messed up. I know that. But we can fix this. We have years together, a family. Please, I cut her off. No, we had a family. You decided to gamble it for some pathetic secret fling. And now, you get to live with the consequences. Her face crumpled, and for a split second, I saw panic in her eyes. You don't mean that, she whispered. I did, more than anything. I'm filing for divorce first thing Monday. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't care. Not anymore. Jake, you can't just throw this away over a mistake. I stepped past her, walking toward the hallway. No, Megan, you threw it away. I'm just making it official. I heard her sob as I disappeared into the bedroom. For the first time in months, I slept soundly. Megan spent the next few days trying everything to stop what was coming. She alternated between furious outbursts, desperate pleas, and guilt-ridden apologies. It was pathetic to watch. She'd go from screaming at me 1 minute, blaming me for exposing her, for ruining her reputation, to sobbing the next, saying she never meant to hurt me, that we could fix this if I'd just listen. But I didn't listen. I'd already spent years listening, years believing her words meant something. Now, only actions mattered. By Monday morning, I had my appointment with a lawyer lined up. Megan must have sensed it because she woke up early, sitting on the edge of the bed with red-rimmed eyes. Jake, can we talk before you do anything drastic? I didn't even look at her. It's not drastic. It's overdue. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Please don't do this. We can figure something out. We can go to therapy. We can work through it. I scoffed. You didn't want therapy before, Megan. You wanted hotel rooms and stolen weekends. You didn't care about working through anything then. Her breath hitched. I was stupid. I was selfish. But I swear it didn't mean. I turned to face her fully, my patience gone. Stop. Just stop. Do you even hear yourself? You're not sorry you cheated. You're sorry you got caught. If I hadn't exposed you, you'd still be sneaking off with him, still lying to my face. I don't want your empty words, Megan. I want you out of my life. Her lip trembled, but I didn't feel an ounce of sympathy. I grabbed my keys and walked out. At the lawyer's office, things moved quickly. The evidence was overwhelming. GPS logs, text messages, pictures, even statements from other parents who had started piecing things together after my announcement. It was an airtight case. Megan wasn't just guilty of infidelity. She was reckless about it. She had made a fool of herself, and now it was costing her everything. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings, paperwork, and negotiations. Megan fought hard at first, trying to claim she deserved half of everything. But the prenup shut that down fast. The house was in my name. The savings, mostly earned from my job, were protected. She had nothing. Reynolds, on the other hand, faced his own nightmare. His wife had filed for divorce immediately, taking their kids and making sure the entire town knew why. The school board terminated his coaching position within a week. He went from being a respected figure in the community to a disgraced ex-coach whose name was synonymous with scandal. Megan's world crumbled alongside his. She was banned from the team's events. No more tournaments. No more standing on the sidelines pretending to be the perfect mother. The women she once gossiped with at games no longer spoke to her. Every glance she received in town carried judgment. The final blow came when she had to move out of the house. She tried to fight for it, but legally, she had no claim. The day she packed her things, I watched from the porch as she loaded her car, her face hollow with defeat. She turned to me one last time. Are you really just going to let me go like this? I met her gaze without hesitation. You let me go first. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, to find some last shred of control. But there was nothing left to say. She got in her car and drove away. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. Megan had spent so long making me feel small, making me question my worth. But now I was free. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.